Aloha and welcome to our second video on the animal kingdom. We'll talk more about the invertebrates. In this video, we will discuss mollusks, arthropods, and the echinoderms. Alright, the next phylum is the phylum Mollusca, or the mollusks. The phylum Mollusca is made up of several different kinds of organisms. You can see our representative here is a gastropod or a snail. We also have the slugs. We have the cephalopods, which would be our nautilus, but more so our squids, octopus, and cuttlefish. We have our bivalves, which are our oysters and our clams, and then finally we have the chitons here. And we're seeing a lot more specialization inside of these guys. Most of them will have a shell. The octopus has lost it. The squids have degenerated. Slugs have degenerated as well. And then we have the snails, which have a well-pronounced shell also. We're noticing that we have differentiation in the digestive system. So we're starting to see intestines form, stomachs form. We have a heart. So we're seeing a true circulatory system in these guys. One of the interesting things, they have a mouth, and inside the mouth they have this radula, and that's kind of like a tongue, but it has like some sharp projections on it. Some of these snails can actually drill into other snails' shells using this radula. They'll have a strong foot, and that's how they'll move around. So we can see them kind of moving across like that. When it's a clam, it'll help them dig. When it's a snail, that's what they move across on. And the mollusks, like I said, it's just this wide variety, but we notice it primarily with these shells here. Next up is the phylum Arthropoda, and Arthropoda means jointed legs. So if we look at this picture down here, we can find a leg of a grasshopper, an insect, a praying mantis, and a crustacean, a crayfish. And we'll notice that in all of these examples, they have a jointed leg, which allows them a little bit more motion. And that's what Arthropoda refers to. They also have an exoskeleton, so they're all covered in a harder outer shell, and it needs to have those joints so they're able to move. Otherwise, you would just be kind of like stuck there. The other thing that the arthropods go through is this process called metamorphosis. And there's two different kinds of metamorphosis. We have complete and incomplete metamorphosis. In complete metamorphosis, we see a drastic change of body type. So we start off with our eggs here. It hatches into a larvae. And if you look at the larvae here, that larvae will continue to develop into a pupa, and then we form our adult. And if you look at the larvae and the adult, you'll notice that they have two distinctly different looking bodies. It's not a bad example here, but think caterpillar and butterfly, how a caterpillar and a butterfly look totally different. Incomplete metamorphosis, your eggs hatch into what we call a nymph, and if you look at the adult, they kind of look the same. So incomplete doesn't have that drastic body change. Now the arthropods are a huge group of variation animals, probably one of the largest groups that are out there for phyla. If you look at our different groups, we have the Uniramia, and in the Uniramia we have our centipedes, millipedes, and our insects. We also have the Chelicerata, and in the Chelicerata we see our horseshoe crabs and our arachnids, our spiders and scorpions. And then finally we have the crustaceans, and in the crustaceans we have our crabs and our crayfish, but we also have pillbugs, water fleas, and little tiny copepods. So as you can see, the phylum Arthropoda is this really huge and diverse group of animals that are out there. Next up is the phylum Echinodermata. Echinodermata, echino is spine, dermata is skin, so these are our spiny skinned organisms. What we notice with the Echinodermata is now we have an endoskeleton. So where we had an exoskeleton or a skeleton on the outside in the arthropods, it's moved to the inside for the echinoderms. And you'll see these little spiny projections that are going to be on the skin here. Now, if we look at our representative types of echinoderms, we have our crinoids, which are going to be a stalked one, and then we'll kind of see this basic general body plan for the echinoderm here. All right, we have our sea stars, the asteroidea, which are there, and they're related to the brittle stars, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. We can see a starfish here, and then we have our brittle star over here. So we can see the difference between the two. We have our holothurians, which are the sea cucumbers, and you can see one over here, and that's kind of if we just took the starfish and stretched it out this way, and then if we compressed it down and covered it in spines, we would have our sea urchins as well. So these are our 5 representative echinoderms. One of the other things that makes them unique is the fact that they have tube feet, and they use these for locomotion, and they can also use them to hold on to things. And quite simply, that's just going to be a stalk, and at the end of the stalk they're going to have like a little suction cup, and that'll allow them to stick, and they can release them, and they can use those to move across the ocean floor. So in summary, let's take a look at our last three phyla. We started with the mollusca, the mollusks, and those are like our snails, our octopus, and they have a soft body covered by a fleshy mantle. They move with a muscular foot. Some of them will have a shells. They have all organ systems, so that's nice, and they have bilateral symmetry. And they can feed by using this specialized tongue-looking thingy called a radula. Next up were the arthropods, and these are the segmented body and they had jointed legs. Most of them have antennae, so we can start seeing an increase in the use of senses out there to explore the world around them. And these guys here had an exoskeleton. And the exoskeleton is kind of interesting. It's a hard outer covering, so when they got bigger, they'd actually have to shed these exoskeletons, and it'll show you this in the lessons. And then the last group were the Echinodermata, and these are the spiny-skinned organisms. Their body were all 5 parts in radial symmetry, and they're all living in the ocean, and we can see these 5 parts here in our sea star. Okay, so that's it for the invertebrates. As always, the lessons will go into a little more detail. Good luck on the lessons, and we'll see you in the next video.